What truly happens when loyalty collides with destiny on a tower high above the sleeping castle? The air bites with cold, torches flicker against stone, and somewhere in the dark, two minds sharpen like blades. You probably won't survive this, but you'll understand it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm really curious. From which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the astronomy tower, the wind tugging at your robe as if trying to convince you this was a terrible idea. A sentiment you've grown used to, right alongside predictions of doom and the occasional reminder that divination is graded on enthusiasm rather than accuracy. Below you, the grounds stretch into a patchwork of moonlit silver and deep shadow, the kind of view that makes you briefly consider starting a poetic journal entry before remembering you can barely commit to finishing your homework. Still, something about tonight feels heavier, as though the castle itself is bracing for a secret returning to the surface. A centaur once claimed that moments like this show up in the stars as cosmic hiccups, a term scholars politely avoid because it sounds like something invented during a very sleepy staff meeting. Historical records do note that medieval astronomers often interpreted unusual sky glows as signs of political upheaval, which is exactly the type of fun fact that would have earned you extra points if you'd remembered it during an actual exam instead of now, when only owls are judging you. You grip the stone railing, sensing, though you'd never admit it aloud, that someone else once stood here, receiving a prophecy that should have stayed buried beneath tapestries and polite silence. The air hums faintly, as if a voice is trying to return. And for a moment, you think you hear the rustle of shawls and the clink of oversized beads drifting toward you. Whatever is waking tonight didn't begin here, but its first note echoes in your bones, urging you toward the truth. Trelawney lost, buried, or possibly misplaced between tea leaves. You step into Trelawney's classroom, a place that somehow always smells like oversteeped tea, lavender incense, and the faint panic of students trying to fake visions on short notice, and you immediately feel the room lean in as though it's been waiting for you. The curtains droop like tired eyelids, the lamps glow with the enthusiasm of napping fireflies, and every cushion on the floor seems determined to swallow you whole the moment you sit. Historically accurate, in fact, since 18th century divination chambers were intentionally designed to feel like dream spaces where the mind softened and the imagination expanded, though none of the historians ever mentioned how hard it is to stand back up without making an undignified noise. On the nearest table sits a teacup that clearly has opinions about being observed, its leaves swirling into a shape that looks suspiciously like a question mark doing yoga. You lean in, hoping for some cosmic clarity, but instead the cup tilts slightly, as if disappointed in your reading abilities, which is ironic considering many scholars still debate whether tasseography works better when the reader is confident or when the leaves are simply in a good mood. You take a cautious step back, reminding yourself that this is the same classroom where a third year once claimed to see a grim reaper wearing fuzzy slippers, a fringe tidbit Trelawney insisted was symbolically profound, before immediately assigning 3 feet of parchment on slipper-related omens. The air feels warm, thick with unspoken warnings, and possibly 12 different essential oils, and yet beneath all that softness is a sharp thread of awareness, as if something hidden in this room has been trying to speak for years, but couldn't get past the decor. A bead curtain rattles even though you didn't touch it. Classic. A stack of crystal balls shivers in unison, and you swear the incense smoke forms the outline of someone dramatically sighing. You can't tell whether Trelawney's old prophecy is reaching toward you, or whether the castle itself is nudging you along with the gentle persistence of a teacher who refuses to accept late homework. Either way, the room breathes around you, urging you deeper into its velvety strangeness as the forgotten message stirs again. You slip behind the velvet curtain, expecting nothing more dramatic than a dusty broom, or perhaps a rogue student napping through class. But but the air thickens immediately, as though you've wandered into a memory that hasn't quite decided whether to welcome you or file a complaint. The curtain settles behind you with a sigh far too theatrical to be accidental, and for a moment you stand in a pint-sized antechamber lit only by a single lantern, whose flame flickers like it's doing interpretive dance. The scent shifts here, less floral, more metallic, as though the world behind this drape operates on a different set of rules, one where visions don't ask for permission and old prophecies cling like spiderwebs to your clothes. You take a cautious step, and the floor groans loudly enough to imply it hasn't forgiven anyone for anything since 1873, a date that feels oddly specific until you remember that according to castle maintenance records, a divination apprentice back then spilled 12 gallons of moon water here during an experimental scrying slip and slide, an incident most historians politely ignore, although fringe researchers insist the stain left behind still predicts thunderstorms. You run your fingers along the wall, half expecting it to pulse, and something behind you shifts, the lantern suddenly stretching its glow to reveal another curtain within the first, a space folding into itself like the castle is trying out amateur origami. You breathe in slowly, feeling the hush settle on your shoulders, heavy and expectant, and you realize this section of the tower has always been more of a backstage for Trelawney's visions than a storage nook. Rumor once claimed she came here after her lessons to refresh her inner eye, which might explain the faint lemon shape someone carved into the beam. A joke? A symbol? An accidental dent made during an enthusiastic gesture? Scholars continue to debate whether these markings represent proto-divination sigils or just over-caffeinated professors with carving tools, a debate considerably less intense than last year's argument about whether prophecy dreams should be categorized as subconscious astronomy or wishful academic poetry. You push aside the second curtain and step into a surprisingly narrow chamber, its walls draped in faded purple cloth embroidered with gold thread spirals that look like they were designed by someone who had only heard of spirals secondhand. At the center sits a round wooden table with 3 legs, actually 5, but 2 appear to be ethereal projections rather than physical supports, which you decide to accept without comment because acknowledging it out loud feels like a commitment you're not ready for. The table hums faintly, the way books hum in libraries when they're trying to eavesdrop, and on its surface lies a thick layer of dust disturbed only by a single clear streak where something, or someone, once pressed down with intent. You lean closer, noticing the faint outline of a hand, the fingers long and delicate, the kind of hands that either belong to someone deeply mystical or someone who dramatically stretched before making prophecies. A joke bubbles up in your mind. Something about how even prophecies need ergonomic support before dissolving under the weight of the silence. In the lantern light, the air ripples, and suddenly a soft whisper curls into your ear, a voice that sounds like Trelawney filtered through too many layers of sleepiness. It was not lost, only waiting. You freeze, instinctively glancing over your shoulder as though you might catch a shawl floating away, and the thought hits you that maybe prophecies don't vanish so much as wander off for dramatic effect. The curtain behind you rustles again without wind, the movement slow and almost shy, like a house elf trying to cough politely. You exhale, reminding yourself of the mainstream historical fact that medieval mystics often used enclosed spaces like this, dens, alcoves, hollowed-out towers, to deepen the sensory quiet needed for trance states, a practice documented in 14th century monastic texts, even though those texts rarely mention how unsettling the architecture could be at night. This room feels like that, a place deliberately built for half-perceptions, for the edges of visions that refuse to present themselves fully in the light, and you begin to sense it now, the half-formed thing that lingers here, not malicious, not helpful, simply waiting for you. Your eyes adjust further, revealing delicate strands of translucent fabric drifting lazily from the ceiling. At first you assume they're cobwebs, but the moment you look directly at one, it darts upward with all the urgency of a student hiding uncompleted homework. A joke tries to break the tension, something about filing a maintenance request under haunted textiles. but your voice stays low because the air here doesn't seem to appreciate commentary. You reach out again, fingertips brushing one of the drifting strands, and the room brightens by several degrees, revealing a tapestry on the far wall, woven with a scene so chaotic you suspect it was either made in a rush or during an especially caffeinated vision. A figure stands in its center, tall, robes swirling, shawls blooming out like startled birds, and though the face is unfinished, you recognize the posture immediately. Trelawney mid-prophecy, caught between terror and theatrical commitment. Her mouth is open, lifeless threads hanging where sound should be, and around her head, golden threads spiral into an unfinished rune, one that pulses as though aware you're staring directly at it. A shiver crawls up your spine as you approach, realizing the tapestry isn't merely decorative. It feels interactive, alive, the way some enchanted windows change scenes when students with questionable intentions walk by. This one, however, shifts only in its corner, where a small embroidered teacup hops anxiously, spilling stitched leaves that rearrange themselves every few seconds into shapes that might be warnings, or possibly menu items. You blink hard, wondering if you're imagining it, but then the cup clearly forms a leaf pattern that looks a lot like a tiny shrug. The fringe tidbit that some early diviners claimed fabric tapestries could absorb stray visions comes back to you. Most scholars dismiss it as exaggerated medieval superstition, though a minority argues passionately that woven fibers can store psychic residue, usually right before everyone else gently recommends a vacation. A low thrumming begins beneath your feet, the floor vibrating like it's playing bass in a band only it can hear, and the lantern dims enough to cast the room into a sepia glow that feels older than the stone itself. Your heartbeat syncs with the rhythm, slower, heavier, and the air suddenly smells of burnt herbs and citrus peel. Trelawney's scent, or at least the scent she claimed in one interview, was conducive to foretelling deep-rooted truths. The whisper returns, this time more coherent, threading itself through the fabric of the room. Behind the curtain lies what was seen, but not spoken. Your breath catches the words don't echo. They settle, as though written directly into the air. The tapestry's golden rune brightens, its lines shifting, rearranging, forming a symbol that looks almost complete, except for one missing stroke, a gap that pulses like a heartbeat. You raise your hand cautiously, feeling the pull of it, a soft magnetic tug coaxing your fingers closer. When you're inches away, a breeze stirs from nowhere, swirling around you with the stubborn determination of a librarian shushing students. Your robe lifts slightly, a reminder that this castle, with all its centuries of layered magic, has its own opinions about timing, and apparently, you're not allowed to touch the rune, not yet. Another joke fights its way into your mind, something about ancient prophecies needing to take a number and wait their turn, but the air swells again, the lantern flares, and suddenly the room sharpens into focus, every thread of the tapestry glowing faintly. The unfinished rune quivers, and for half a heartbeat you see an image overlay the room, a silhouette standing here long ago, shawls trembling, voice cracking, vision blooming behind her eyes. Trelawney, younger perhaps, or simply more awake, but unmistakably her. And then it fades. The silence that follows feels thick, a contemplative pause from the castle itself, and you realize the half-formed prophecy is not merely hiding here. It is alive, restless, circling the edges of your awareness like a bird waiting to land. This chamber isn't a dead end. It's a doorway, a threshold, and whatever waits beyond it is ready to speak again. You step back, pulse steadying, and the curtain rustles once more. Not warning, not threat, just invitation. The lost prophecy is no longer lost. It is reaching for you, echoing behind the velvet and dust, hinting that its next fragment lies deeper within this tower, in a place where even Trelawney hesitated to look. The room exhales, the lantern brightens, and you know the hunt has only begun. You return to the main corridor of the tower, and the moment you step into the open air, the night sky greets you like an overstimulated stage performer who refuses to stick to the script, because every star above Hogwarts seems to be doing something it absolutely should not be doing at this hour, shifting and flickering in ways that would make any serious astronomer clutch their quill in existential distress. though the castle appears completely unfazed as its stone arches glow faintly under the moving constellations. The wind curls around your ankles, guiding you toward the wide balcony where Trelawney once dragged her reluctant students to perform experiential star reading, an academic method she invented to justify holding class in a place where the breeze might enhance what she called her prophetic aura, a mysterious concept that most scholars have labeled poetic exaggeration, though a few fringe researchers claim aura fluctuations can indeed alter minor predictive abilities, a claim still lodged under open scholarly debate phrase categories. You lean over the balustrade, watching the sky ripple like ink swirling in water, and a part of you recognizes the strange rhythm pulsing between the constellations, a restless dance that doesn't resemble the typical orderly motion of star patterns recorded across centuries of medieval celestial charts. In fact, historical astronomers occasionally documented nights when the sky brightened or dimmed unpredictably during political upheavals, a mainstream historical fact that makes the shifting constellations feel less like a natural phenomenon and more like the universe clearing its throat before delivering a monologue. The wind intensifies, sweeping your robe backward with enough dramatic flair to make you feel like you've been cast as the mysterious figure who knows too much in a theatrical production. A slight joke the night seems to play on you simply because you're alone, and the castle enjoys elevating the ambiance whenever someone's destiny wanders dangerously close to something important. You step farther onto the balcony as a star near the western horizon pulses twice, then darts slightly upward, a movement so abrupt it reminds you of a classroom ghost raising its hand to answer a question it definitely wasn't asked, a tiny joke provided courtesy of the cosmos itself, which has a habit of making everything unnecessarily dramatic. The shifting lights gather into a loose spiral, and the shape sends a shiver through your memory. Not because you've seen it before, but because it mirrors the incomplete rune on the tapestry behind the curtain. The night sky reflects what the fabric struggled to reveal, as though the castle and the heavens are working together like two professors silently collaborating to deliver an unassigned extra credit lesson you never asked for. You blink slowly, grounding yourself as the spiral widens, the center darkens, and thin lines of light dart outward like threads stretching themselves awake from a long and reluctant sleep. You take a breath, feeling the air shift, and the strange pressure building behind your ribs suggests the prophecy is reaching through the sky now, stitching its missing pieces into constellations because the tower chamber wasn't dramatic enough for its return. A thought that amuses you briefly, a third light joke slipping into your mind, imagining Trelawney lecturing the stars for stealing her spotlight again. You move closer to the railing, and the constellation Lupus seems to rotate, its stars aligning into a sharp angle pointing directly toward the upper tower windows, an unignorable gesture that feels intentional despite your best efforts to remain rational. You breathe in the soft cold, letting your senses settle, and only then do you notice something new. A faint shimmer on the stone floor beneath your feet, not moonlight, not starlight, but a silvery glow rising like steam from the cracks between tiles. You crouch, pressing your fingers to the stone, and the glow brightens as if acknowledging your touch, forming a thin thread that snakes across the balcony, curls around one of the columns, and rises in a line so precise it could have been drawn by an overly ambitious first year who decided to impress their charms professor with a light-based art project. The silver thread flickers, stretches into the air, and connects itself to the starlit spiral above you, forming a bridge of luminescent tension that hums faintly, a vibration so soft you can feel it before you hear it. The night trembles, and for a moment the sky seems to inhale, the stars compressing into a tighter formation before exploding outward again in a soft shimmer that drifts down like celestial dust. The sensation that follows settles around your shoulders like a cloak you didn't know you were missing, and when you straighten, the world sharpens, every sound crisp and intentional. The whisper of wind through battlements, the flutter of owl wings in the distant dark, the rustle of enchanted ivy creeping along the stone with a rhythm older than the castle itself. The glow pulses again, and as you watch, the silver thread thickens, forming an almost rope-like filament that wraps around your wrist gently, insistently, tugging you toward the upper chamber where Trelawney once gave her most unsettling predictions. The castle seems to approve, its stones warming slightly beneath your feet, guiding you along the balcony with the same patient authority as a professor nudging you toward a difficult essay topic. You allow yourself to be led, the glow pulling you toward a narrow side staircase rarely used except by staff who enjoy taking shortcuts, or by ghosts who love dramatics. And as you ascend, the silver line coils up the steps ahead of you, illuminating runes in the stone that flicker awake after centuries of sleep. You recognize one, an old sigil for sight beyond sight, a rune mentioned in a single obscure divination manuscript from the 1290s, copied by an apprentice who claimed to have seen a thread connecting the stars to the human mind, a manuscript most historians dismiss as metaphorical nonsense, though a few experts argue that it might represent an early understanding of magical intuition. The silver glow pulses under the rune, confirming its importance, turning metaphor into reality as the air vibrates with a low hum that fills the staircase like an invisible choir murmuring ancient verses. When you reach the landing, the glow sweeps forward, slipping under a wooden door with peeling paint and a stubborn hinge, a door that creaks open slowly as if waking from an inconvenient nap. You step inside. The room beyond is oddly bare, almost ascetic, with no curtains, no incense, no decorative shawls, just a circular stone space with a domed ceiling painted in fading celestial patterns. The sky above the dome mirrors the real sky outside, but not perfectly. Here the constellations drift more quickly, shifting between shapes that don't exist in contemporary astronomy. One formation resembles a teacup sprouting lightning. Another looks like a hand offering a crystal orb. A third flashes into existence only long enough to imprint itself on your mind before dissolving into a blur of silver sparks. A whisper slides through the chamber, softer than wind, clearer than memory. The same voice you heard behind the curtain, but steadier now, strengthened by the swirling sky and the humming stones. The voice says only one thing: this is where it began. The silver thread detaches from your wrist and rises into the air, weaving itself into a delicate arc before slicing smoothly through the dust coating the floor, revealing a spiral carved into the stone, identical to the one on the tapestry and the one mirrored in the sky. You step closer, feeling the pulse of the spiral beneath your feet, and sense that this is the true origin point, the birthplace of the prophecy that fractured itself across curtains, tapestries, constellations, and forgotten memories. The room hums again, and for the first time you see the spiral shift, its lines rearranging like a puzzle reassembling itself after too many centuries apart. The silver glow travels along the carved grooves, lighting them one by one until the entire spiral radiates a soft brilliance. And then, with a final quivering breath, a thin beam of starlight pierces the dome, illuminating the spiral's center. The air thickens. The room vibrates. The stars above you freeze in place, sharp and unmoving, as if holding their breath. The prophecy stirs, no longer a whisper, but a presence, a weight, a memory, a voice preparing to unfold itself completely. And this time, there is no curtain, no tapestry, no flickering lantern to soften its edges. The prophecy wants to be seen, it wants to be known, and you, standing alone on the threshold of its awakening, feel the castle settle around you, like an audience taking its seat before the final act. The night steadies, the spiral brightens, and the sky leans in, ready to finish what began long ago. You follow the newly awakened spiral's glow as it stretches into a thin, shimmering line that slithers beneath the door and out into the corridor, moving with the quiet authority of someone who knows exactly where it's going, and you trail behind it down the winding staircase that coils along the tower's inner wall like an ancient spine. The air cools with each step, settling into the crisp stillness found only in castle hallways that haven't been properly explored since the era of enchanted quills and overly ambitious medieval scribes, and the silver line pulses faintly against the stone tiles as though reacting to each rune hidden in the mortar. The castle breathes slowly around you, its magic warming the stones just enough to guide you like the dim lantern light of an archive hallway leading to a long-forgotten shelf. You reach the staircase landing that splits into two corridors, one bright, familiar, lined with portraits of professors snoring gently in their frames, the other dim, dusty, and sloping downward into a secluded wing rarely visited except by wandering cats, overly curious ghosts, and the occasional student searching for a quiet place to panic before exams. Naturally, the silver glow chooses the second path, curling into the darkness with a confidence that makes your footsteps echo behind it like an apprentice trying to keep up with a master. You walk deeper into the hallway, feeling the temperature drop a few degrees as shadows thicken like old velvet. Historical fact: many medieval libraries were built underground or in heavily insulated wings of castles to protect delicate manuscripts from humidity and fire, which might explain why this forgotten corridor leads toward silence so complete it feels intentional, a functional reminder that knowledge sometimes preferred isolation. The corridor widens into an archway supported by columns carved with swirling constellations, their shapes slightly distorted, as if the sculptor had been working from memory rather than observation, a common flaw in 14th century star mapping, where artists often improvised embellishments that introduced small inaccuracies, though fringe scholars love to argue these distortions were deliberate magical codes rather than artistic liberties. A thin layer of dust coats the archway floor, marking decades of neglect, and the silver glow leaves a clean, visible trail as it slides ahead into the abandoned corner of the library, an alcove so forgotten that even the dust looks surprised to see company. You step inside the alcove and blink as the room comes into view, a circular space lined with low shelves, their edges curled and chipped from centuries of disuse, each one piled with scrolls, brittle papers, and books whose covers sag from the weight of time. No student ever studies here, no teacher assigns work here, and even the ghosts seem to avoid lingering in this still air. The glow pauses at the center of the room, hovering above a heavy oak table, layered with scraps of parchment that lean against each other like exhausted puzzle pieces. The table itself is covered with an intricate arrangement of ink blots, half-finished diagrams, and the unmistakable fenestration of divination charts, though their style looks centuries older than Trelawney's curriculum, more structured, more academic, as though they belonged to an era when castle seers were expected to cross-reference intuition with astronomical calculations. You brush aside a thin film of dust with your sleeve, revealing lines of cramped handwriting that twist across the parchment like vines reaching for sunlight. One word appears repeatedly among the faded entries: iterum, again, once more, return. The silver thread settles on the table and begins unraveling itself in a circle, illuminating the parchment beneath it with a faint white glow that sharpens the faded ink until each line becomes legible. You lean over the table, eyes adjusting to the newfound clarity, and notice that the parchment isn't just a chart or a diary entry, but a logbook, written in tidy columns by someone who clearly cared more about precision than aesthetics. This is the divination logbook students joked about, the one said to hold every prophecy that mattered but wasn't meant to be spoken aloud, a half-mythical object rumored to have been hidden by an early castle headmaster who believed that prophecy should be preserved but not performed. You run your fingers across the date column, noticing entries dating back hundreds of years, each one marked by a simple observation: a storm, a dream, a celestial flare, a flicker of inner sight. The handwriting changes through the pages, but the structure remains identical, an unbroken lineage of seers contributing their visions to a communal memory. As you scan the entries, the glow concentrates over one page, its light amplifying the words penned in a hurried, looping script you recognize instantly. Trelawney's handwriting, unmistakable in its dramatic flourishes and ink-heavy emphasis on emotionally charged phrases. Her entry is brief, shockingly brief for someone who once assigned 20 pages of parchment to explain why Mars was feeling personally offended, and it reads like an extract torn from a longer vision. The words ripple faintly under the silver glow as if resisting your gaze, each letter vibrating with the tension of a truth that wants to remain hidden. You read slowly, lips barely moving, spiraling fate, broken before spoken. One thread lost, one thread waiting, return of sight when stars misalign. The ink quivers like a heartbeat, and beneath her words lies a faint indentation, the imprint of something pressed hard into the parchment, like a palm bracing itself during the onset of a prophecy. The logbook page trembles as a draft sweeps through the alcove, rustling papers and whispering through the cracked spines of the books. You glance toward the archway, but there's no sign of anyone or anything moving. The castle tends to wander its own halls at night, shifting drafts like living breaths, rearranging shadows like curtains changing positions on a stage. The silver glow brightens suddenly, then darts across the table to illuminate a stack of manuscripts bound in faded blue ribbon. You pick the top one up, surprised by its weight, and gently brush off the dust clinging to its cover. The title, written in weathered gold ink, reads, Astronomical Interference in Predictive Sight. A Study of Celestial Reactions to Divinatory Magic, 1493. You flip it open carefully as the pages groan with age, releasing the metallic smell of ancient ink. The treatise describes the rare historical phenomenon of star misbehavior, nights when constellations shift slightly in response to strong magical surges, a documented event occurring only during major prophetic awakenings or catastrophes. It cites 3 known examples, including an early seer's vision that allegedly caused the constellation Draco to shiver in the sky for 3 nights, though many historians argue about the accuracy of these accounts, claiming that medieval astronomers frequently exaggerated natural fluctuations. You continue turning pages, the paper crackling under your fingers, until you reach a diagram identical to the spiral you saw in the sky above the tower. The caption beneath it reads, The Convergence Spiral, a celestial echo that forms only when a prophecy's origin point reconvenes upon itself. The words hit with the weight of certainty, confirming what the castle has been guiding you toward. The prophecy didn't disappear. It fragmented, dispersing itself across the castle, the sky, the curtain chamber, and now this logbook, waiting for the signs to align so it could be reassembled. The silver glow pulses emphatically, then leaps to another artifact on the table, a thin, leather-bound notebook with frayed edges and a single cracked clasp. You open it and find Trelawney's early notes, written before she became a professor, before the shawls and beads and dramatic pauses. Her handwriting is steadier here, her observations more structured, even meticulous. She describes experiencing visions as half-formed echoes, hovering at the edges of dreams, refusing to coalesce into full words unless she immersed herself in complete silence. Some entries mention moments when she felt compelled to speak, but swallowed the words because the timing felt wrong, a sensation she interpreted as the castle intervening to delay the prophecy. One passage stands out, "The stars bent tonight, not to me, but around me," as though something older attempted to reclaim its voice. You close the notebook slowly, letting the words settle, and the alcove seems to hold its breath. The silver thread loops once around the logbook, glowing brighter, urging you to lift it. You slide the heavy volume off the table, and the dust beneath it scatters in a sudden swirl, revealing a symbol carved directly into the table's wood. The symbol is the same spiral, but smaller, more compact, carved with an uneven intensity that suggests it was done in haste, but not by Trelawney. The grooves are too deep, the knife marks too angular, the style too archaic for her hand. This was carved centuries ago. A line of text beneath the spiral, barely readable through dust and age, reads, "Sight returns to the seeker who reassembles what was divided." A gust of wind slips through the alcove and extinguishes the solitary lantern hanging near the archway, plunging the room into a soft glow, lit only by the silver thread curling around your wrist and the faint shimmer of the logbook's ink. Shadows shift across the shelves, stretching longer than their objects justify, tugging at the corners of the room like memories rising from sleep. You tighten your grip on the logbook as the silver glow lifts into the air once more, weaving itself into a thin ribbon that drifts toward the far left shelf, where an oversized book leans out at a precarious angle. The moment you touch its spine, the shelf trembles and the book swings outward, revealing a narrow opening behind the wood, an entryway hidden so seamlessly that even the dust seems shocked to discover it exists. You duck into the cramped passage, the air instantly colder, the walls narrower, the floor sloping downward in a gentle curve. The glow leads you along the cramped path until it opens into a small chamber carved directly into the thick stone foundation of the castle. Here, ancient star charts cover the walls, drawn in the sharp, geometric style favored by medieval astronomer priests who believed the sky to be a vast manuscript written by cosmic intelligence. A cracked crystal orb rests on a pedestal, still humming with faint residual energy. You approach it slowly, watching as the silver thread wraps itself around the orb, tightening into a perfect spiral. The orb brightens, the walls hum, the air thickens, and the prophecy that should never have been lost stirs again, waiting for its final piece. You step closer to the cracked crystal orb, feeling the temperature deepen into a cold so absolute it feels carved, rather than natural, the sort of cold found in places untouched by breath or movement for centuries, and the silver thread tightens its spiral around the orb until it sinks beneath the surface like a stitch disappearing into fabric. The orb responds with a low, resonant hum that vibrates through your bones, a sound so deep and ancient it feels as though it predates the castle itself, resonating inside you like something older than language. The chamber, illuminated only by the faint crystal glow and the spill of silver light now trapped inside its fractured shell, expands in your perception, even though its stone walls haven't budged. The space feels taller, broader, layered with echoes of long-gone footsteps and half-remembered chants from seers who once practiced their craft here before divination became an elective for students seeking an easy OWL. The runes etched into the walls flicker awake one by one, shedding fine sand as they warm to life, each one glowing with a soft golden hue that intensifies into a latticework of interconnected sigils. Historically, medieval monasteries documented the use of runic chambers specifically built to enhance trance-based prophecy, though these chambers were typically cylindrical and lined with quartz deposits to amplify sound, a mainstream historical detail that seems oddly relevant as the orb before you emits a growing hum that ricochets through the curved stone architecture. The cracked surface of the orb refracts the silver thread into dozens of splintered rays that swirl through the room and concentrate themselves on a single point, a narrow pedestal carved with a flame motif, its top smooth from centuries of use. The hush that settles over the chamber feels purposeful, as if the air around you braces for the next movement of a ritual older than anyone remembers. You place your hand on the pedestal, expecting cold stone, but instead you feel warmth, gentle, steady, a pulse that radiates upward into your arm like a heartbeat belonging to the castle itself. The orb brightens in response, projecting a thin beam of light that strikes the pedestal and flows across its surface like water spreading through channels unseen. The grooves in the stone react first, lighting up in a slow cascade of amber light, revealing a symbol hidden beneath centuries of soot and dust. A flame made not of fire, but of sight, its shape mirroring the spirals you've encountered throughout the tower, the sky, and the logbook. The flame flickers slightly, and the orb pulses again, drawing the attention of every glowing rune etched into the chamber's walls. They begin to hum in harmony, forming a low, chant-like vibration that fills the room with the resonance of old magic. Magic that feels watchful, deliberate, and impossibly aware. The silver thread, now almost entirely absorbed by the orb, resurfaces from its fractured shell in a sudden flare of white light, wrapping itself around the flame symbol like an enchanted ribbon marking the chamber's heart. Then it splits into multiple strands that curl through the air with the grace of floating ink strokes, drawing new patterns above the pedestal, weaving faint glyphs from shimmering dust that drift and settle into a circular design suspended in midair. The patterns resemble proto-divination symbols described in one of Trelawney's earliest research notes, glyphs believed to represent the foundational structure of prophecy before language evolved to capture their meaning. Scholars continue to debate whether these glyphs were ever part of a true prophetic system or merely exaggerated interpretations of medieval artistic expression. But the symbols before you radiate too much coherent energy to be decorative. Each glyph brightens as it completes, locking into place like a constellation forming under invisible guidance. The air trembles. A small spark snaps from the orb and strikes the center of the floating glyph circle, illuminating its core so brightly the entire chamber floods with white gold light. You blink hard, momentarily blinded, and when your sight returns, the circle is spinning slowly, rotating with the casual inevitability of a clock deciding it's time to wake. The spin quickens, the glyphs blur, and the light deepens into a rich amber glow that washes over the walls, revealing details previously lost to shadow. More carvings, more symbols, more evidence that the chamber was once a focal point for prophecies too powerful or unstable to be spoken in open air. The hum grows, vibration rising into your teeth, into your jaw, into your ribs, resonating through your heartbeat until you feel tethered to the chamber's rhythm. The orb flashes once more, and a beam of concentrated light bursts from its center and strikes the spinning circle directly. The effect is immediate. The glyph circle stops mid-rotation, freezes, and then opens like a sliding iris, revealing a plane of light, flat, shimmering, rippling like a mirror made of molten moonlight. The air pulls inward as though the chamber itself inhales through the opening, and the pedestal warms more intensely under your hand. The silver thread darts toward the opening, weaving itself into the border, as if stitching the mirror into stability, anchoring it so the vision forming behind the shimmering veil doesn't collapse. The hum transforms into a soft, pulsing tone, steady, precise, deeply resonant, and the veil of light begins to depict something, shapes forming slowly, like ink spreading through parchment. You lean closer, heartbeat steadying as the image becomes discernible. The first thing you see is a room, the curtain chamber from before, but not dusty, not abandoned. It is lit brightly, its curtains fresh, its table polished, its lanterns full of flame. Figures move inside it, robed individuals whose faces are half dissolved by the veil, but whose movements are sharp and purposeful, like people accustomed to performing rituals with practiced precision. They gather around the table, joining hands in a circle, and the lantern light flares with reddish gold intensity. One figure steps forward, placing a crystal orb onto the table, not cracked, but whole, a perfect sphere that glows faintly from within. The chamber hums louder, the mirror shifts, the figures blur into one, dissolving into a single silhouette draped in shawls, shoulders hunched, posture familiar. The silhouette leans over the orb, hands trembling, and a ripple of light surges outward from its center, striking the walls of the vision room like a shockwave. The silhouette jerks, then straightens abruptly, voice rising, not in words, not yet, but in a strained exhale filled with fearful urgency. Then the vision flickers, stabilizes, and reveals the figure's face. You see Trelawney, younger, eyes open far wider than usual, lips trembling, fingers clenching the edge of the table hard enough to whiten the knuckles. She leans forward as if pushed by the force of the prophecy forcing itself into her throat. Her mouth opens, forming words that hang on the edge of articulation, but before she can speak, another figure enters the room, rushing forward with panic in every movement. This second figure reaches out, placing a hand firmly on Trelawney's shoulder. The moment the contact is made, the prophecy implodes into a burst of silver sparks, scattering the vision room with violent radiance that fractures the scene into shards like broken glass. The mirror trembles, struggling to hold the vision together. Trelawney flinches, her eyes widening with shock, and a single phrase escapes her lips, only a fragment, but sharp enough to cut through the collapsing vision. "The thread must." And then the shards fall, dissolving into white dust, and the mirror closes like a fist. The hum fades slowly. The chamber settles. The spinning glyph circle shrinks and collapses inward, dissolving into the air like candle smoke curling into emptiness. The silver thread withdraws from the pedestal, unwrapping itself and rising toward the ceiling, where it dissolves into faint glittering motes that drift down like snow. You stand still, heart thudding with the weight of what you saw. The broken prophecy is not merely a forgotten echo. It was interrupted. Deliberately, someone was present the moment Trelawney tried to speak it. Someone who stopped her. Someone who triggered the shattering of the original vision. And the prophecy, divided in that moment, scattered itself across the castle like a living thing seeking refuge in curtains, tapestries, stars, and abandoned alcoves. You step back from the pedestal as the orb dims, its glow receding into the cracks like breath withdrawing into lungs. The runes on the walls quiet, their light fading into embers, leaving only the faint silver residue of magic clinging to the air. The chamber's silence deepens into a reflective stillness, as if waiting for you to understand what comes next. The castle shifts softly, stones settling, air adjusting, and the sense washes over you again. This is not the end of the prophecy. It is a threshold. The next piece lies not in the stars, nor in the forgotten logbooks, nor in the echoing chambers where old seers hid their visions. It lies with the truth. Trelawney tried to speak but couldn't. It lies in the memory of the moment she was interrupted, and the castle wants you to find it. You leave the chamber with the cracked orb, stepping back into the narrow passage where the air feels thinner, as though the magic you just witnessed is still echoing against the stone in faint aftershocks that ripple along your skin like static. The corridor breathes slowly, the walls contracting and expanding in the subtle way only ancient castles can manage when they want to encourage movement, nudging you toward the staircase that curves upward at an angle so strange it feels intentionally designed to make visitors question their balance. The faint silver residue drifting from your clothes settles into the air like glowing dust, clinging to the stones as though marking your path. When you reach the landing, the shift in temperature is immediate. The damp chill of the lower levels gives way to the warmer, slightly incense-scented corridors above, the kind of scent that seems permanently embedded in any structure that has hosted divination teachers for too many decades. You turn toward the central stairwell, its torches flickering with renewed energy, as if the castle already knows where it wants you to go. The steps spiral around the tower's inner shell, drawing you higher with each turn until the familiar patterns of stone give way to darker, smoother materials. Obsidian inlay, granite slabs, polished surfaces reflecting dim torchlight. When you reach the 7th landing, a long hallway stretches before you, lined with tall windows whose panes shimmer with the faint distortion of magical reinforcement. Outside, the night sky hangs like a tapestry of shifting stars, still unsettled from the celestial misbehavior you witnessed earlier, each constellation trembling slightly, as if adjusting to a new orientation after centuries of certainty. At the far end of the hallway stands a wide, ornate mirror, framed in bronze feathers, an artifact so old it predates most of the faculty, an object rumored to have been brought to Hogwarts by an early headmistress who believed mirrors were conduits for truths that preferred not to be spoken. Mainstream historical records confirm that medieval mystics frequently used reflective surfaces for trance work, though accounts differ wildly about how effective such tools were, with some scholars arguing they merely encouraged dramatic self-reflection rather than true insight. The fringe scholars, of course, insist mirrors can show alternative versions of events if the observer stands at the right angle during the right celestial configuration, a theory generally dismissed as fanciful but strangely persuasive as you step closer and the mirror shifts, its surface rippling as though welcoming you. You stop in front of the glass. It does not show your face. Instead, the surface shimmers with the reflection of another room. The curtain chamber again, its lanterns glowing brightly, its velvet drapery alive with movement. You lean closer, pulse steady, watching as a silhouette steps into the scene. Trelawney, but older this time, her shawls layered like protective armor, her hair a halo of disordered curls vibrating with the tension of withheld prophecy. She approaches the table with the kind of slow, deliberate steps taken by someone who knows the future's weight rests uneasily on their shoulders. Her hand rises toward the crystal orb you saw earlier, now glowing soft blue, and she pauses as if hesitating at the threshold of speech. The mirror trembles, ripples sweeping across its surface like waves reacting to unseen wind, and Trelawney's face comes into sharp focus. Eyes tired, mouth clenched, brows drawn tight with the strain of trying to restrain something too large to hold. The moment intensifies. Shadows stretch behind her, gathering in the corners of the vision room as if preparing to swallow the light entirely. The orb brightens, casting a white glow across her face, and her eyes widen as though finally surrendering to the inevitability of the prophecy's return. She leans forward, lips forming the first syllables of the words the prophecy wants to speak, the ones fragmented across the castle in spirals and starlight. But just as her voice rises, the mirror flashes with blinding silver, and another figure materializes beside her, this one sharper, younger, dressed in angular robes embroidered with runes you recognize faintly from the chamber below. The figure lifts a hand, not in violence but in desperate restraint, pressing it firmly toward Trelawney as if trying to stop her from stepping over a precipice. The vision ripples violently, almost rupturing the mirror's surface. Light fractures into scattered shards, warping the scene. The orb shakes. Trelawney jerks backward, and the figure's silhouette dissolves into streaks of light that vanish before you can determine their identity. The mirror steadies. The light dims. The vision shifts. Now you see the same curtain chamber, but decades earlier, long before Trelawney occupied it. The furniture is arranged differently. The colors are richer, and the atmosphere feels calmer, more scholarly. A group of robed figures encircle the central table, their faces obscured by time's blur. One of them gestures to the orb on the table, its surface swirling with silver clouds. They speak silently to one another, their lips moving, their motions smooth with the confidence of practiced ritual. The mirror allows no sound, only motion, but the tension in the room is unmistakable. One of the figures, tall, adorned with an amulet shaped like a star, extends their hand over the orb and draws from its surface a small ribbon of silver light, identical to the thread you have been following since the tower's balcony. The ribbon twirls upward, connecting itself to a symbol drawn in chalk on the floor. A spiral, its lines fresh and unbroken. When the ribbon touches the spiral's center, the chalk ignites briefly, burning with cold white fire before extinguishing. The room's occupants freeze, reacting to something unseen, and the scene dissolves into darkness. You take a slow breath as the mirror's surface clears, leaving behind only your reflection, slightly distorted by the residue of magic. The air around you feels heavier now, as though carrying the emotional residue of visions you were not meant to witness. The torches along the hallway flare without wind, crackling flames stretching upward like curious fingers. The castle exhales loudly, a groaning shift of timber and stone that feels almost like acknowledgement. You step back. The mirror hums, a low, melodic resonance vibrating through the floor and into your bones. And then a faint outline forms on its surface. Not a reflection, not a vision. A word. Follow. The mirrored letters dissolve a moment later, but the instruction settles into you with immutable certainty. You turn, allowing instinct, or perhaps the castle's subtle guidance, to lead you through the hallway and toward a narrow spiral staircase hidden behind a velvet drape that blends seamlessly with the stone. You climb slowly, the steps creaking softly beneath your feet in the rhythmic pattern of a heartbeat. The staircase loops around itself twice before depositing you in a small observatory room filled with dusty instruments reminiscent of early astronomical devices, brass lenses, worn compasses, and a prism so large it occupies an entire corner, its fractured surface casting ghostly colors across the floor. The room's central feature, however, is a massive magical mirror, this one circular, framed by a twisting metal vine embossed with crescent moons. Unlike the last mirror, this one lies dormant, covered in a sheet of purple fabric that flutters even without wind, as though breathing lightly. The silver thread materializes briefly at your side, curling once around your wrist, before slithering toward the mirror, lifting the sheet with delicate precision. The mirror beneath it gleams. Its surface is not reflective. Instead, it is dark, an inky void swirling with faint hints of starlight, a pool of midnight suspended vertically. The surface ripples as you approach, responding to your presence with a subtle luminosity that grows stronger with each step. You stand directly before it, and the void shifts, forming shapes in shadow. The first shape is a spiral. The second is a flame. The third is a pair of hands, one reaching forward, the other pulling away. The void ripples again. The hands dissolve, and suddenly the mirror shows you something unmistakable. A view of Hogwarts from above, but tilted, as if seen through the memory of a falling star. You watch the castle's towers blur as time flows backward in the mirror's vision, erasing decades, centuries, until everything slows, freezes, and then settles into a moment too ancient for any living soul to recall. The castle stands darker, simpler, newly built. A single figure walks across the courtyard, hooded, purposeful, carrying under their arm a bundle wrapped in cloth. The figure enters the tower, climbs the staircase, and steps into a room that looks strikingly familiar. The first divination chamber, before Trelawney, before the curtain room, before the orb cracked. The mirror leans closer to the memory, revealing the figure placing the bundle on the central table. They unwrap it carefully, reverently, revealing not a crystal orb, but a small silver flame suspended inside a glass dome, the original prophetic instrument, the precursor to the orb you saw earlier. The flame flickers, alive, conscious, aware. The hooded figure steps back, raising both hands in silent invocation, and the flame grows brighter. It twists upward, forming a spiral. It condenses, forming a thread, the first thread. The mirror dims, the vision fading slowly, leaving behind only your reflection hovering above the void. The air thickens as the last image burns into your memory. A flame, a spiral, a thread, and the knowledge that whatever prophecy was born that day has been waiting centuries to finish what it started. Behind you, the torches flicker violently, casting light across the room in trembling waves. The castle groans again, steps shifting, stones settling, as if bracing for the next movement of the prophecy's resurrection. The mirror grows dimmer, the air grows colder, and somewhere deep within the tower walls, something ancient stirs, something that has been watching the prophecy scatter, fracture, reassemble, and rise. You stand before the mirror, heart steady, breath slow, feeling the weight of what comes next settle into your bones like an unspoken oath. The thread is not finished. The prophecy is not done. And now, you are part of its unfolding. You descend from the observatory with the circular mirror, the heavy silence clinging to you like mist as the staircase twists downward into a corridor you're certain didn't exist earlier, a quiet rearrangement only a centuries-old castle can perform, with the smug subtlety of a cat switching chairs while you blink. The torches along the walls ignite in sequence as you pass, flames lifting their heads as though greeting an expected guest, their glow brushing across tapestries too faded to recognize and stone panels engraved with constellations you've only seen in Trelawney's more experimental lesson plans. The air grows warmer, not comforting, not inviting, but charged, like the tension before a thunderstorm when the world seems to hold its breath. You follow the path carved into shadow, footsteps tapping softly against stone, rippled by age and intent, until a narrow archway emerges at the end of the hall, framed by intricate silver inlay shaped like threads of woven light. The silver whispers faintly, humming the same intermittent tune that has haunted every step since you first saw the starlit spiral. And as you cross beneath the arch, the hum deepens, vibrating into your skin like a signal finally being acknowledged. The chamber beyond is unlike any you've seen in the castle, neither classroom nor observatory nor forgotten archive. It is long and narrow, with a high ceiling supported by beams carved from dark enchanted oak, their surfaces glittering with constellations that rearrange themselves when you're not looking directly at them. The walls are covered in thin, floating veils of silver-threaded fabric that drift like curtains underwater, shifting with unseen currents of magic. Each veil glows softly, pulsing at the same slow, steady rhythm as the spiraled thread that has guided you here. The floor is polished moonstone, its pale surface reflecting the veils in ghostly duplication, creating the illusion of walking between two worlds, one physical, one echoed. At the far end of the hall stands a raised platform surrounded by a ring of runic symbols etched directly into the stone, their lines precise and deeply carved, radiating outward like spokes of a wheel. Directly above the platform, suspended by nothing visible, hangs a cluster of thin silver threads, each strand drifting independently, as though alive. You step forward, drawn by a quiet compulsion. The floating veils part gently as you move through them, brushing your shoulders with a cool, prickling sensation that makes your heart thrum faster. They whisper in faint, fragmented cadences, half-thoughts, memories, echoes of voices speaking prophecies without ever forming the words. A mainstream historical fact whispers into your mind, recalled from your earlier readings. Medieval diviners often believed the future existed as threads in a loom woven by cosmic forces, and prophecy was simply the moment when one of those threads vibrated strongly enough for a human mind to detect it. The veils seem to embody that belief, threads of possible futures flickering in and out of clarity, glimpsed only through the shifting light. As you approach the platform, the silver cluster shivers, responding to your presence. Thin, glowing tendrils extend downward from it, swaying like gentle strands of silk caught in a breeze. They do not touch you, not yet, but they hover close, their glow brightening each time your breath brushes against them. The runes around the platform dim and brighten in alternating pattern, the sequence repeating every few seconds, creating a pulsing rhythm that feels eerily connected to your heartbeat. You step onto the platform without hesitation, the moonstone warm beneath your feet despite its cool appearance. The silver threads above you react instantly, extending lower, weaving themselves into a delicate arc that encircles you in a slow, rotating pattern. The veils around the hall begin to shine brighter. Patterns form on their surfaces, swirling spirals, flickering stars, the shapes of hands reaching through dim light, all blending with shifting visions that build upon one another with increasing speed. One veil shows the earlier chamber behind the curtain, its table glowing. Another displays the astronomy tower balcony where the stars misbehaved. Another shows a close-up image of the cracked orb still pulsing with contained silver light. The veils gather their scenes like puzzle pieces desperate for assembly, each one flickering with urgency. And then a fourth veil flickers to life at the edge of your vision, this one showing green velvet curtains split open by an unseen hand. In the center stands Trelawney herself, her silhouette trembling with a mixture of dread and determination, her mouth forming the shape of a prophecy she has yet to fully speak. The silver threads above you pulse, sending a soft vibration through the platform, and the veils adjust their glowing silhouettes to reveal more of the scenes. This time, you see the unknown figure again, the one who interrupted Trelawney. They appear younger than before, moving swiftly through the curtain chamber with movements too smooth to be accidental. Their face remains blurred, obscured by the mirror memory's haze and the veil's distortion, but their posture conveys desperate purpose. The veils display this figure twice, once in the act of interrupting, and once just before, standing alone near the divination classroom, breathing hard, fingers trembling, eyes fixed on something you cannot fully see. The tension in their stance suggests fear, not of Trelawney, but of the prophecy itself. The runic circle around the platform glows brighter. The moonstone floor vibrates beneath your feet. The silver threads lower themselves slowly until they begin to encircle your arms, not binding you, but scanning you, tracing your pulse, aligning with the beat of your heart. They glow brighter each time they make contact with your skin. The sensation is cold at first, like the brush of early morning frost, but it warms quickly, shimmering through you with the electric sensation of knowledge waiting to be unfolded, not forced, not pried open, but revealed with intention. The veils shift again. More scenes emerge. You see the logbook from the forgotten library alcove, open, glowing. Next to it lies the fragile leather-bound notebook containing Trelawney's early notes. One veil shows writing appearing on its pages in real time. Faint lines of ink curling into new shapes, forming new words that appear only long enough for you to register before dissolving, leaving behind ghostly afterimages. The silver threads pulse sharply, and more text emerges in bright strokes. Thread severed prematurely, vision unstable, seek convergence. The words flicker, then fade. Another veil shows the starlit sky above the astronomy tower. The constellations shift again, not into chaos this time, but into a deliberate pattern, aligning into a shape so precise it feels intentional. A long, arched figure with outstretched arms, holding a spiraled flame. The shape dissolves, forming a different pattern, this time a circle divided by a single sharp line, like a coin split between two fates. The stars rearrange once more, this time forming a series of spirals that overlap, intersecting like threads of destiny weaving together. Your heartbeat aligns with the rhythm of the runes. The silver threads tighten around you, not restricting, but stabilizing your presence within the converging visions. The veils blur and brighten, layering their images one atop another. You see Trelawney's early visions. You see the hooded figure with the silver flame in the distant past. You see the younger version of her in the curtain chamber, reaching toward something unseen. You see the moment the prophecy shattered, the moment the orb cracked, the moment the thread split. And woven into these moments are hints of something older, something deeper, something that has been circling the castle like an unseen watcher, waiting for the right alignment. The room shifts again. The veils change shape, becoming narrower, longer, more precise. They form threads of woven light that move toward the center of the hall, anchoring themselves above the platform. The silver threads around you respond to them, intertwining, connecting each veil thread into a single spiraling formation that hovers above your head. This new formation pulses with brilliance, radiating enough light to wash the room in pale, shimmering tones. A new image emerges, not from a veil, not from a mirror, not from a memory, from the formation itself. You see a bright silver spiral expanding slowly, the lines unfurling like petals of a flower blooming in reverse. You see another spiral forming beside it, smaller, irregular, flickering between solidity and fracture. The spirals hover near each other for a moment before weaving together, merging into a single, unified shape. One perfect, one broken, both essential. The formation brightens, and a large veil at the center of the room pulses with a new vision, one that has not yet occurred, a future. You stand in the divination classroom, older, steadier, holding the logbook in your hand. Across from you stands Trelawney, no shawls, no dramatic posturing, just silent clarity as she stares at a silver thread floating between you. The thread pulses once, twice, and then she speaks, not theatrically, not fearfully, but with calm certainty. Her lips form new words, ones the prophecy did not speak before the vision collapses before you can decipher the phrase, but its weight settles into your bones with unmistakable gravity. The veils dim. The curves of the runic circle soften into a dull glow. The silver threads drift upward once more, releasing you from their gentle embrace. The spiraling formation above your head dissolves slowly, scattering flecks of silver dust that rain down onto the moonstone floor, shimmering like stars returning to the night sky. The hall falls silent. The platform's runes pulse one final time. A single veil remains active. It drifts toward you, settling at your feet like a fallen parchment. On its shimmering surface is a single symbol, a spiral split in two, a thread winding between both halves, and beneath it, written in glowing script, "Rejoin what was broken." The air settles, the light fades, and the next piece of the prophecy waits. You leave the hall of drifting veils and step back into the narrow corridor. The air thick with the residue of magic, so old it settles on your skin like fine powder, clinging to your breath as if reminding you that the truth you seek is no longer scattered across stone and sky, but drawing together, piece by piece, into a single, undeniable shape. The castle feels different now, not merely alive, but attentive, watchful, as though the very walls are leaning subtly inward to observe your movements with ancient curiosity. Torch flames bend toward you as you walk, guiding your path with soft, flickering persistence. The silver spiral symbol from the veil presses against the inside of your memory, glowing faintly in your mind's eye like a rune that refuses to fade. The corridor leads you toward a staircase that twists sharply downward, its steps uneven from centuries of use. You descend slowly, the stone cool beneath your fingers as you trail one hand along the curved wall. A faint hum rises through the stairwell, vibrating through the air in a rhythm that matches your pulse, slow, steady, insistent. The sound grows louder as you continue downward, turning the stairwell into a spiraling tunnel of resonant echo. You reach the base of the stairs and step into a low-lit passage that seems unfamiliar even compared to the castle's most unpredictable shifts. The walls are narrower here, the air colder, tinged with the faint metallic scent of crystal dust and aged parchment. A single lantern hangs from the ceiling, glowing with the pale silver light that has become the signature of your journey. Ahead, a small wooden door stands slightly ajar. You can see the faint shimmer of silver threads slipping through the gap like beams of lunar light. You push it open gently and step into the room beyond. The chamber is circular, with high shelves lining its walls, each filled with scrolls, books, and fragile tomes that look as though they haven't been touched in centuries. In the center of the room sits a round table built from dark oak, its surface covered with an array of artifacts. Cracked crystal shards, faded star maps, loose parchment covered in divination diagrams, and a tarnished brass astrolabe that ticks quietly, despite lacking any moving parts. The silver thread appears here too, several strands woven loosely across the table like the remnants of a forgotten tapestry. As you step closer, the threads brighten and rise into the air, slowly forming a spiraling shape that expands outward before collapsing back into itself, as if trying to communicate an idea too complex to settle into words. They swirl once, twice, and then drift toward the far side of the room, where a tall, dusty mirror stands draped in a heavy black cloth. The fabric quivers as the threads slip beneath it, and then the cloth slides off entirely, falling to the floor with a soft, muffled sigh. The mirror beneath is tall, nearly reaching the ceiling, with a silver frame etched in runes you recognize from the chamber with the cracked orb. Its surface is not reflective. Instead, it holds a dim, smoky sheen, like a storm brewing behind glass. The silver threads hover before it, pulsing gently as they weave a loose spiral pattern on the mirror's surface. Slowly, the glass ripples and begins to form an image. At first, it shows a familiar place, the divination classroom, its lamps glowing warmly, its curtains drifting like soft shadows. You recognize the table where Trelawney often conducted her lessons, though here it looks cleaner, neater, free of the clutter you've come to expect. Then the image shifts, revealing a younger Trelawney standing beside the table, her hair less frazzled, her shawls more orderly. She's not performing, not exaggerating. Her movements are sharp, her eyes keen, her posture steady. She places both hands on the table and leans in, inhaling deeply, as though preparing to speak. Your heart tightens. The mirror shifts again, revealing the moment before the prophecy broke apart. The younger Trelawney stiffens, her eyes widening, her breathing deepening into the unmistakable rhythm of trance. Her lips part. Light rises from the table. The room brightens. Then the figure enters. The same blurred figure from before, the one who interrupted her. Their posture tense, their hand extending, their movement swift but hesitant. The mirror zooms closer, the haze fading slightly, revealing a partial outline of their face. You see high cheekbones, short hair, a determined jaw, eyes shining with a mixture of fear and urgency. They reach out toward Trelawney, but their lips move too quickly to form clear words. The mirror magnifies the moment, sharpening the soundless motion. The figure mouths something silently. 2 words. Not yet. The mirror trembles violently. The scene fractures. Silver light explodes outward. The vision breaks apart like shattered glass dissolving into smoke. When the mirror settles again, it reveals a new scene. The same figure alone, sitting in the dark of the corridor outside the divination classroom, shoulders hunched, breathing hard. The figure wipes their face with trembling hands, overwhelmed by what they've done, not out of malice, but out of a desperate attempt to protect someone or something. The mirror blurs once more, refusing to reveal their identity fully, as if that knowledge is still beyond the prophecy's reach. The silver threads twist anxiously in the air, forming small spirals that pulse with soft, sorrowful urgency. They drift toward the table, weaving themselves into a shape above one of the scattered scrolls. You lift the scroll carefully, unrolling it across the table. The parchment is fragile, its ink faded, but the spiral etched into its surface is unmistakably the same one you have seen in the sky, on the pedestal, and throughout the castle. The scroll contains a map, not of land, but of time. It depicts cycles of prophecy, spirals of influence, the convergence of past and future moments that create openings for visions to emerge. Interspersed among the spirals are notations in ancient script, references to thresholds of sight, fractured threads, and return points where a disrupted prophecy can reassemble itself through echoes left in objects, places, and memories. A fringe tidbit from your earlier readings floats back. Some seers believed prophecies were not linear utterances but living entities that could adapt, fracture, and even defend themselves if threatened. The scroll seems to confirm this theory, outlining how a prophecy might splinter into pieces if interrupted before reaching completion. You trace your finger along one spiral that ends abruptly, its final curve broken by a jagged cut. Next to it is a faint notation, spoken in shadow, interrupted, to return through convergence of sight. The scroll's symbols pulse faintly beneath your touch, and the silver threads gather above it, forming a small, glowing cluster, as if activating something hidden within the parchment. The room trembles. Books shift slightly on their shelves. The air thickens. The mirror behind you hums. And then a faint voice, soft, wavering, fading in and out like a flickering candle, echoes through the chamber. It is Trelawney's voice. Not the theatrical, trembling voice she uses in class, not the exhausted, scholarly tone from her early notes. This voice is calm, stripped of performance, stripped of fear. Not everything lost is meant to remain hidden, the voice whispers. The prophecy broke because it wasn't ready, but neither was the one who tried to stop it. The silver threads brighten, circling your hand where it rests on the scroll. The truth lies in the moment after the fracture, the voice continues. In the silence where the words should have been, find the echo, rejoin what was broken. The voice fades, the room falls still. You lift your hand, and the scroll curls closed softly, as though sealing itself once more to protect the fragile knowledge it holds. But the silver threads remain bright, lifting into the air and forming a thin, shimmering line that drifts toward a small door at the far end of the chamber. One you hadn't noticed before because its wood matches the stone so perfectly it seems carved from shadow. The silver line pauses at the door, waiting. You approach. The door creaks open. The silver thread slips through, and you follow it into the final quiet where the unspoken truth waits to reveal itself. You step through the narrow doorway, the silver thread slipping ahead of you with soft certainty, guiding you into a chamber so quiet the air feels padded, as if sound has been carefully removed and stored elsewhere for safekeeping. The room is small, circular, and dimly lit by a single lantern whose flame burns with a muted, blue-white glow, casting long, slow shadows that lean like tired guardians against the curved walls. The floor is bare moonstone, smooth and cool beneath your feet, marked only by a faint spiral carved into its center, the same spiral that has followed you through veils, mirrors, skies, and broken visions. The silver thread floats directly above the spiral, pulsing faintly, waiting. You step to the center. The moment your foot touches the spiral's heart, the air warms as though awakened by your presence, and the lantern brightens, sending light rippling across the stone like water disturbed by a gentle hand. The silver thread descends, coiling around your wrist in one soft loop before rising again, splitting into dozens of shimmering strands that drift outward into the room. Each strand touches the wall and activates a hidden rune etched so faintly you wouldn't have recognized them without the thread's guidance. As the runes flare to life, the stone walls transform into a luminous panorama of shifting scenes, echoes of the prophecy's fragments you've witnessed throughout the castle, the curtained chamber, the cracked orb, the drifting veils, the starlit balcony, the silver flame from the earliest divination rituals. All of them orbit around the spiral like celestial bodies circling a core of truth. The scenes converge, blending at the edges, forming a tapestry of memory so rich and interconnected it feels almost alive. The chamber's hum deepens, vibrating through your ribs. The runes brighten. The spiral beneath your feet glows. The scenes slow, then freeze, and the room falls into absolute silence, so total it feels like stepping into the heartbeat between moments. A soft, faintly shimmering outline forms at the edge of your vision. At first, it looks like drifting smoke, then like a silhouette, then like a presence stepping through a veil. It solidifies into the shape of a woman, tall, thin, draped in shawls that ripple as though touched by an invisible breeze. Her eyes are clear, bright, steady. Not the watery, dramatic gaze you've seen in Trelawney's classes, but something deeper, older, closer to the core of who she once was before theatrics swallowed her truth. She stops a few steps away from you, hands loosely clasped, gaze warm and unwavering. Her presence doesn't frighten you. If anything, it steadies the air around you, bringing a strange sense of quiet clarity. The silver strands gather between you, weaving into a gentle arc of light that connects your chest to hers. Not binding, not pulling, simply linking 2 points of understanding across a space that suddenly feels sacred. The lantern's blue-white flame steadies. The spiral beneath you brightens. Trelawney, no longer blurred, no longer fragmented, lifts her head and exhales, as though relieved to finally be seen without interference. "It fractured," she says softly. Not in a trance, not in a vision, but in the calm voice of someone speaking a memory long overdue. The prophecy shattered because it was not ready to be born, neither was I. Her words resonate through the chamber, stirring each frozen scene into faint ripples of motion. The curtain room flickers, the starlit balcony glows. The cracked orb hums, the veils shimmer, the echoes of the past tighten into focus. "When I spoke it the first time," she continues, stepping closer, "the threads began to pull too hard. The future strained against the present, forcing its way through a doorway too narrow. I felt it tearing, splitting, breaking. Her eyes flicker with quiet pain, not theatrical, but genuine, the weight of a burden she has carried alone for far too long. And then someone stopped me, someone who thought they were protecting me, protecting the castle, protecting themselves. The silver strands tightened slightly, revealing the blurred figure from your visions standing behind her, a shadow reaching forward, hand outstretched, desperate to prevent something they believed too dangerous to let form. Trelawney glances at the image with a mixture of sadness and understanding. They acted out of fear, not malice, but fear can be just as sharp. The prophecy broke in that moment, splintered into pieces that sought refuge wherever the castle would hold them. She lifts her hand. The spiraling scenes shift, merging into a single swirling vortex of starlight and shadow. The castle hid what was left of the truth, behind curtains, in mirrors, in stars, in forgotten books, until the moment it sensed a seeker capable of bringing the fragments together without causing another fracture. The spiraling light expands, wrapping slowly around your shoulders like a shawl of warm moonlight. The chamber's hum shifts into a deep resonance that settles into your bones. Steady and reassuring, Trelawney's outline brightens, her shawls glowing softly as she approaches the spiral carved beneath your feet. "You have walked through every echo," she says. "You've seen every piece. You've gathered the broken threads. All that remains now is the joining." Her voice softens into something almost tender. "The prophecy cannot return through me. My thread has run its course. But through you, through the one who has followed its echoes, it can be spoken." The silver strands expand above you, rising like the branches of a luminous tree. They weave intricate patterns in the air, drawing the fragments together. The shattered orbs glow, the starlit spirals, the drift of veils, the ancient flame, the split mirror, the fractured memory. Each piece clicks into place with a soft, crystalline note, harmonizing into a single coherent spiral of light suspended above your head. The chamber warms, the runes glow gold, the spiral brightens. Trelawney steps back, her outline beginning to fade like morning mist dissolving in sunlight. She raises one hand, not in farewell, but in blessing. "Do not fear what comes next. The prophecy will not break through you. It will complete itself through you." The spiral lowers, the light descends. The chamber pulses. The prophecy forms. Not in words yet, but in weight, in shape, in inevitability. And before the final vision takes hold, a slow calm settles around you. A quiet, absorbing stillness that grows softer, deeper, like a warm blanket pulled over tired shoulders. The chamber eases into a meditative rhythm, heartbeat, breath, hum, melding into a soft dissolution of light. The runes dim, the veils of memory retract. The silver threads unravel into drifting motes of gentle brightness. The world narrows into a hush of warm stillness. You inhale, exhale. The prophecy waits, and as the calm deepens like the last glow of twilight sinking into night, you drift into the softest wind down the castle has ever offered. Warm, slow, rhythmic, peaceful, carrying you into the threshold of what comes next.